All right, welcome in, everybody. GC Live, Chris Clark here. I'll be joined very shortly, momentarily, by my partner in crime, Wes Mitchell. Hope everybody's having a great week. About to roll into the weekend here. And man, we have a lot to talk about. I know it's been a little bit since we've been doing a show. Since we have done a show, rather, Wes and I have been pretty darn busy rolling through a bunch of stuff with the coaching search, tracking the roster, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to bring Wes on here shortly. But this, of course, is GC Live. Chris Clark from GamecockCentral.com here. And we're presented, as always, by our good friend Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. 803-422-6797. His NMLS number is 71597. And you can learn more about him, of course, at clinthammond.com. If you are in the market for a new home, if you're looking at a mortgage, if you're looking at a refi, if you have questions about home ownership, the mortgage process, you already know, you've heard about Clint for literally years on our show. Go check him out if you have some questions. And I bet it's just a bonus, guys and gals. He's going to have some things to say about South Carolina football, the offseason, the critical offseason that we are now in, as well as some new coaches that are on staff. That, of course, being new OC and quarterbacks coach Kendall Briles, offensive line coach Randy Clements, and running backs coach Stan Drayton, all now officially in the building, all now officially with their contracts approved by the Board of Trustees this week, and all ready to go and introduced at this morning's press conference. I know a bunch of you caught that, whether it was maybe a little bit of it on YouTube, on the ESPN app. And of course, you can check out our coverage on GamecockCentral.com about that. Before we dive into it even more here, going to tell you about another one of our great partners, that's Ferry Chevrolet. FerryChevrolet.com, F-A-I-R-E-Y, FerryChevrolet.com, or 803-937-4531. Ferry Chevrolet has been around since 1926, conveniently located right there in Orangeburg. Business started in St. Matthews, so about 100 years of great service in the Palmetto State. You can check out their new and used inventory online, FerryChevrolet.com. Again, that's F-A-I-R-E-Y, FerryChevrolet.com, or 803-937-4531. Same deal as Clint Hammond. If you are in the market, if you're thinking about a new or used vehicle, just like if you're thinking about a refi, new home, mortgage with Clint, check out FerryChevrolet.com. Give them a chance to earn their business. Joseph Ferry, fourth generation dealer, still rocking and rolling. So we're going to bring Wes in here shortly, but let's talk, obviously, what everybody wants to talk about right off the bat, and that is the new South Carolina coaches on the offensive side of the ball. 3 of them to be exact, and we're going to dive into those a lot. For a couple questions right off the bat, Vincent, I think you were trying probably here to ask about maybe Furry and Elliott. Yes, Mike Fury, Sean Elliott, still on the coaching staff. Elliott will move back to the tight ends room, and then Sean Elliott will move back to the tight ends room, and Mike Fury will coach the wide receivers as he did last year. And then they will integrate with the new coaches who are now on staff. So those 2 guys will remain on staff. Defensive staff still in place now. No changes that we know of there. Frankly, no changes anticipated. You never know. Coaching carousel still spinning, still going on a little bit. Always have to keep an eye on that. But right now, the only change are the 3 coaches that were approved this week and introduced this morning. Wheezy GC says, this is a good lineup of offensive staff. Should work nicely if the defense stays consistent. Should be a better opportunity for more wins. Yeah, and I mean, y'all, you look at this past season for South Carolina, 4-8, not where you want to be. And South Carolina navigated the season, frankly, we've all talked about it all offseason, statistically, in terms of the scoreboard, in terms of some of the other statistics, third down conversions, what USC did in the red zone, what USC did running the football, tackles for loss, sacks allowed. Can't hide from it. Towards the bottom of the conference, at the bottom of the conference, towards the bottom nationally, at the bottom nationally, in way too many of those categories. And so that really hampered this team this season. Despite that, this team was able to stay in some games and get them to the fourth quarter, but not able to get over the hump in terms of getting some wins. And so in Kendall Briles, you're bringing in a guy who I would say, y'all, for the first time, Shane Beamer has a guy that he's brought in that has a proven track record in college of production at the Power 4 college level, right? You look back at the last few OCs, Mike Shula, been a college head coach, been an NFL coordinator, most of his experience throughout his career in the NFL. Dowell Loggins, similar deal, play caller for a lot of his career. That experience came at the NFL level. And then Marcus Satterfield, actually out of the previous OCs, had the most college experience. One of them, P4 school at Baylor. And then at Temple, where he was Matt Rule's OC. This is a guy, as we welcome in Wes Mitchell, that has a proven track record of production at the Power 4 level, which is frankly exactly what Shane Beamer was going for. Thanks to everybody for joining us here. We're bringing in Wes. Wes, somebody asked earlier if you were in the portal. Our guy, Travis Edwards. You're not, which I'm very thankful to hear. Wes, are you with us? You were frozen for a moment.
Yeah, I think I'm with us. Am I with us? Can y'all hear me?
Hear Wes? I can't. Maybe we'll just have to lip read, just like the Beamer press conference on YouTube earlier. Wes has exited the building while he figures out his microphone situation. Somebody, Richard Morris asked about Greg Adkins. I haven't heard of any change there, Richard. One thing that I do know, and so here's where we get. Let me back up for a second. We know that Kendall Briles wanted to bring a coach, some coaches. Shane Beamer talked about that today. It's obviously bringing Randy Clements in as the offensive line coach. Shane Beamer really, really wanted to bring Stan Drayton in as running backs coach. Said today, which we had reported as well on Gamecock Central. It's a guy he's been wanting to hire and wanting to get for a long time. Was able to make that happen. So one thing you look at is support staff, right? Will there be any changes there? Will there be any shakeups there? One guy that was in town with Kendall Briles as he arrived was Mike Anthony, who was an assistant quarterbacks coach at TCU and has been with Kendall Briles at some other stops. Haven't totally confirmed it. Certainly looks like he's going to be part of the staff if he came into town as those guys were coming back on the plane from being hired. You had Randy Clements, you had Kendall Briles, you had Mike Anthony. Haven't heard anything specifically about any other current, quote unquote, off-field guys, analyst, assistant position coaches, but we'll be tracking that throughout. Wes, let's give it a mic check. You hear?
Let's try again.
Nope.
Can you hear me now?
Nope. You're
Are
off.
you serious?
Yeah, I'm dead serious. I think that's what you said. Yeah. Cool.
Can everybody else hear me?
No, you're still not. You're still not up. It's not making it any better. Wes is still not here, so we'll have to try to get Wes back on.
All right, more questions. They can hear me, Chris.
Recruiting history. Nope, you're still not there. What you got,
They can
Wes?
hear me. You cannot hear me.
I can't hear you at all. No, I got nothing so far. Coleman, you can hear Wes? Yeah. All right, we're going to keep it going. For some reason, I can't hear Wes. We're just going to let Wes talk. Obviously, something must be breaking on my end. And one other thing, we have to give you all the warning every now and then. When we have something going on at the home office, I have somebody literally under my house right now doing something. And so if you start hearing some weird earthquake noises, just forget. No, this is not a prank, Travis. I can't hear it all. So for the first time, maybe we got some first in Columbia with the football program. This might be the first episode where Wes and I are reading, or I'm reading Wes's lips. Wes can hear me. I can't hear him. So we'll just keep talking through this thing and doing the best we can. Wes, I wonder if I go out and let you run the show. I wonder if that'll work.
I mean, maybe.
Oh,
I don't know.
There you are.
So me and Chris, we
there you
have
are.
The same
I think
thoughts
Wes
anyway.
was just messing with me the whole time.
But Travis says we switch sides. That's what's wrong. But all right, so I don't know if Chris can hear me or not. I can.
I got you now. Yes.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm completely serious. I'm not reading your lips. I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Some guy was just blaming me on Twitter for the YouTube problems
I saw that. That was
that
amazing.
South Carolina had.
Yeah.
And then we get on here and we have problems.
Must be.
I feel like we haven't had these in a while. Anyway, all right, let's talk about football. How about that? Let's talk about new coaches.
Got it all.
We're here.
Yeah,
We're both here.
now.
All right, Kendall Briles. Chris, I tell you what, man, here's what stands out to me about this hire. First of all, got to be at least even just factually is the most accomplished offensive coordinator that Shane Beamer has hired at South Carolina. There is a resume, there's a track record, and as you and I have talked about, that does not always mean success. Like, every OC starts somewhere, and a coach may have a great feeling about somebody. Hey, this guy's going to be a great fit. Oh, man, this guy blew me away in the interview. Super sharp. I think Shane Beamer obviously knew how important this hire was. And for one, I think kind of this time paid a lot of attention, it seems like, to, all right, who's done this at a high level at the college level? And, I think you were maybe talking about it on the tail end there when I got in. This is something we reported very, very early on. Beamer is going to go get a college-oriented offense coordinator, a guy who runs a quote-unquote college offense. Now, does that mean they won't necessarily have had some experience potentially in NFL? Yeah, you could see that happening, but we felt very strongly about our information that it was going to be a college-oriented guy. Even if you look at all the names we were tracking, most of them, almost all of them run some version of a spread college offense. Even the guys that had some NFL experience or, had some time in the NFL, I think ran college offenses. And so that stands out to me. The other thing is that you look at some of the stuff, the data on Kendall Briles, and I know Garnet Trust and Dave Bartu, they put out some great stuff to the Garnet Trust members. I don't want to parrot it all on here, but the one thing that stands out is just the immediate improvement that just about all of Kendall Briles' stops have included. You look at, he's taken over, other than TCU, that was an offense in a pretty good spot. All the offenses he has taken over that were struggling has been pretty much universally day one improvement of some kind. And I think that speaks, obviously, he's a sharp guy, but two, it probably means your scheme is, I don't want to say simple. I feel like that's probably a little bit degrading. It's more, but it is something that's able to be learned in one off season where you're not going, well, in year two, this thing's really going to click together. South Carolina does not really have that option at this point. And, even you look at some of the personnel, assuming, they do get a Lenora Sellers back, then you're not going to have him for 2 more years. You're not going to have a lot of these other guys for 2 more years. So it's time to win now. And I think when it comes to the way college football is structured right now, the schemes that your freshmen, that your transfers, like, you're not going to have a bunch of guys for 3 or 4 years. You need schemes that guys can play fast in and excel in relatively quickly. And it appears that's what South Carolina has in the Kendall Briles scheme. We will soon find out what that scheme actually looks like with South Carolina's personnel, because, Chris, the other thing about him, there are some universal truths, I feel like, with his offenses. Like, there's going to be some tempo elements. There just are. There's going to be some RPO elements. There's going to be I would say, hyper-focused element of, let's identify who my best players are. And I know every OC says this, but it's almost like an over-the-top, like, who are my best 2 or 3 guys, and let's just highlight the heck out of these guys. But you look at everywhere he's been, man, there are those truths, but then what the offense is in a given year has kind of evolved. It's kind of morphed based on the personnel for that particular team.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly where I was going next. That is, I would dare say, Wes, every offensive coordinator in football and in the history of football has made a statement such as, we're going to do what our players do best. We're going to build the offense around players, right? So when you hear that, there might be a tendency to say, okay, is that really true? I would say with Kendall Briles, there is a system, there is a scheme, which is, I think, another thing Shane Beamer is looking for. Clarity on what is, fans have taught for years about the identity. What is our identity as an offensive team? And it is frankly hard to figure out what that is, what it has been at times. Kendall Briles has a scheme, has a system, and you just laid out what some of the elements are: tempo, RPOs, things of that nature. But he has also not just said, but demonstrated that in some years, they're going to throw the football all over the place. Some years, you can think of Baylor, you can certainly think of, Arkansas. They would run the football. Now at Arkansas, and Shane Beamer brought up this statistic, one of the years Kendall Briles was there, they were one of 3 teams in the country that ran and passed for an average of 230 yards each per game. So the balance that you're looking for. So Kendall Briles, we also know, is not afraid to just say, we're going to put a receiver or a running back under center, and they're going to just carry the football. You think about a game when they were at Baylor where they were down a bunch of quarterbacks and basically played a receiver most of the game at quarterback. So Kendall Briles, I think, Wes, really lives out the coach speak, or what turns into coach speak a lot of times, of the whole players not plays thing. You in your system, you want to have a system, but you want your system to just highlight, ideally, the strengths of your players. And so I think the starting point of that is thinking about 16, right? Thinking about Lenore Sellers. Now, as you and I sit here, we don't have a 100% answer that you can guarantee, bet the farm, bet whatever you want, that 16's back in Columbia next year. You can't quite, in my opinion, you may disagree with me. I didn't mean to speak for you. I don't think you can go that strong. However, I do feel pretty good about it based on what we know sitting here at 2:20 on Friday, December 12th. I feel good about it. Got to make sure that happens. But assuming it does, you start with 16, the only guy who touches the ball every time, your quarterback, and you start thinking about his skill set and how unique it is. And you start thinking about how Kendall Briles, who again has demonstrated that ability to build his offenses around what his players do best, and what he can do with Lenore Sellers. We all came into 2025 hoping, hey, Lenore Sellers, man, he was really, really good, flat out dominant at times in the back half of 2024. Can't wait to see what he looks like in 2025. And frankly, it was a disappointment, and not all that is on him, for sure, as we have spent plenty of time discussing. But you get the sense, okay, Kendall Briles and his offense and the way he's going to administer things could be just what the doctor ordered to not only get Lenore Sellers back to, that level, but maybe elevate, which is a word that Shane Beamer keeps using this offseason.
Yeah, and I think so. You may even be saying, well, is it a system or is it going to be molded to the players? And you may say, well, are those two things not directly opposing each other? And I think you need to have a foundation that is your system, right? Like that is like, hey, we know exactly what we're going to call this particular look. We're going to know our general global approach to things. And then we're going to dial it in, we're going to add, we're going to subtract, but we still know what we are. Could it be that for the first time in a long time, South Carolina will have a true offensive identity? Like that would be something that, I think is important, and something I want to make sure to get to later on when we talk about the other two coaches. For the first time, that in just a long time, I was trying to go back in my head, maybe since Spurrier and John Hunt, like for the first time since then, you have an OC who has like an offensive line coach that is experienced in his system, right? Like he understands. I mean, these guys have been together forever. And so that's not a catch-all, a fix-all. There's 100 different ways to win football games. But I'd be really interested to see, because we've seen it the other way. Let's see how it is this way, where you have an O-line coach that knows what this scheme is trying to accomplish like the back of his hand. So that's something that Clem, as he apparently goes by, Randy Clements, will bring to this equation here at South Carolina. But there was one other thing. I was missing one other phrase not phrase, but thought. Okay, Briles. So, yes, tempo, run RPOs, and we're going to put you in space. That was kind of like his 3. It doesn't matter what we're doing. We're going to do those things, and then we're going to match everything else around the talent that we have. And so his quote, I was watching a coaching clinic that he was at fairly recent. It was when he was at TCU, so it had to be fairly recent. He says a direct quote from him. He said, "We're not going to walk in there and say, this is what we're doing. You guys have to learn this." So that means basically we're not going to say this is our system. You either get it or you walk out the door. There's going to be some flexibility here. There's going to be some adaptation here. But so part of his DNA is that we're always going to be evolving. Don't be stagnant. He says he will constantly have guys watching college ball, NFL ball, and high school ball, looking for different ideas of things they can implement into their scheme to keep it flexible. The thing that stands out to me, man, I believe the days of just tempo, like tempoing people to death, I believe those days are over. There was that little window of time where if you were just going all tempo all the time, all fast tempo all the time, you were putting up 50 points a game, you were ahead of the curve, and then it kind of came back down to earth. Well, one thing I like, and I think you saw a good bit of this, I think at Arkansas, he said, hey, we can be a motion team as well. We can be a pre-snap motion, pre-snap shift team as well. So I don't think this is going to be locked into, hey, let's try to run 100 plays a game. I think there's going to be some, when we want to go tempo, we're going to tempo teams. And when we get the first down in a drive, let's try to tempo them. But we don't have to be stuck in that. You don't have to be locked in that. And now, Chris, his dedication to the idea of tempo, his dedication to, if we're going to try to tempo a team, is also hyper-focused. Like, it is down to the granular sand in terms of how they're going to do those things, right down to the student manager, whoever is in charge of being the ball boy, is going to be coached up in order to make sure that the tempo operation is handled efficiently and quickly.
Tempo mechanics, as they call it. He had a whole section in that coaching clinic about it. Yeah, exactly. Like training up. If you're the last player with the ball, if the ball doesn't hit the ground, if you catch a ball and you get pushed out of bounds, if you run a football, you're tackled and you still got it when you come up, you're finding the center judge, you're handing him the football so that you're not trying to throw it to a ref that it's maybe been 20 years since he's played ball and he's dropping it, fumbling it all over the place. The center is getting everybody lined up, and then you're going, right? And you're right. You won't see that. You know, this team probably isn't going to be one of those Baylor teams that's just reeling off plays every 7 seconds and just absolutely warp speed tempo. You might see that some. And frankly, Wes, that may play in. We've seen some times when South Carolina has been able to play with some tempo where it looks like you're getting Lenore Sellers into that rhythm and it looks like it's working, right? But you also have to be able to, you know, when you're doing those things, you have to be actually moving the football too in order to sustain it. So, I mean, any of you who I was at actually the 2022 Arkansas South Carolina game, and the Gamecocks didn't do themselves any favors in that game. They had 3 turnovers. But if you're looking at for an example of a Kendall Briles offense, you know, that game, which you can go watch actually the entire thing on YouTube if you want. Arkansas puts up 44 points in that one. You know, they have 162 passing yards. They ran for 295. A guy named Rocket Sanders was really, really good in that game. And then Rocket, as Shane Beamer, you know, revealed today, calls Rocket, who of course ended up playing for the Gamecocks, had a great year last year, said, hey, get it done, you know, hire this man, basically. So if you're looking for an example of, you know, one instance of the Kendall Briles offense. Again, it has morphed, according to the personnel. That particular Arkansas team, Wes, they had a bell cow back in Rocket Sanders. They had an offensive line that could do some things. They had KJ Jefferson, who was a big, different than Sellers, but a big mobile quarterback who could also throw the football. And he certainly had a great year too under Kendall Briles. So if you're looking for an example, that's certainly one. So I think you make a good point on the O-line coach too. The Spurrier John Hunt example you gave may have had some people going, well, that one didn't work out very well. Your point was well taken though, in that all the offensive coordinators that Shane Beamer's had, none of them had actually worked with in a coordinator O-line coach relationship with the person that they were paired with. Now, you see some examples across college ball where maybe you've got an OC who hasn't worked with the O-line coach and it works out fine. But you don't have to worry about, will these two guys get along? Do they know the system? Kendall Briles, I mean, he put it very simply but very accurately. He doesn't have to teach Randy Clements, this is what we do. This is how we block that. He knows it. He knows it just as well as Kendall Briles. They've been doing it for 20-something years together. And they've had that coach-coordinator relationship at several spots. And so you feel good about that, in that the right hand knows what the left hand's doing, right? Now, there'll be some, Stan Drayton has never worked with Kendall Briles or Randy Clements, Sean Elliott, Mike Fury. These guys are going to be working together for the first time. But for the most part, you're never going to have a staff. I don't want to say never. You normally don't get a staff where everybody's worked together for their entire career. That's just how college ball is. But I think that does make you feel better that you have kind of that integration, right? Mm. I think one other thing to keep in mind is the transfer portal is about to open in January. You've got a period now where guys are deciding whether or not to go into the portal, whether it's guys at South Carolina, guys at other schools. Will be very interesting, I think, Wes, when we start getting some information once the portal opens of, hey, they really like this running back. They really like this type of offensive lineman. I think we'll be getting more and more data about that, but they're going to have an opportunity, these new coaches, specifically Briles and his scheme, to find guys, that fit. And he talked about that some today. He's still very much learning these players and what they can do. Yeah, he's watched some tape on South Carolina. He has some initial thoughts of what could work, their strengths, their weaknesses. But as they continue to get to know these players and dive into the film and then have the opportunity to go hit the transfer portal, I think that's something to keep a close eye on over the next few weeks too.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing about the system, man. What type of personnel in theory that you're kind of going to be recruiting to now. You know what I'm saying? Like before, maybe it's all right, let's just try to get the best player. Well, there may be something specifically that Briles is looking for to fit what he wants from his scheme that now you can maybe tune into a little bit more in terms of your evaluations, as opposed to just generally speaking, we want guys that can do this, that, and the other from like a very general standpoint. So I do think there are advantages to that. Now, if you have a system and it's too rigid and you're not willing to adapt and mold it to your players, then there are disadvantages to just like you see coaches that, hey, this is what we do and this is how we do it. And we're probably not going to recruit you if we don't think you fit it. So that's not what this is, but I do think there is some value to having a foundation in what you're trying to do. And, I'm very curious to see which of the guys, like I'd love to be kind of that fly on the wall. Which of the guys, there's always a few players that maybe haven't done as well under one staff, that a new staff comes in and the little light bulb goes on and they go, man, I think this guy can fit what I do. And then there's some guys that maybe you get a fresh start. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you kind of were tapped out a little bit and just going, I don't know if I'm ever going to make an impact here. Well, hey, new guy comes in, clean slate. Let's go make something happen. There was a question. Corey on Facebook said that I'm not convinced a new O-line coach makes a difference when there's no talent there. Who would start for another SEC team? Here's the thing about that, Corey. Offensive line, even though it's not fun in today's college football world to say this, it is still at its core a developmental position. It just is. Like, yeah, there are some ready-made, just absolute dudes out there. They aren't. Those guys are few and far between. So you have to be able to develop talent, and I think there's still actually quite a bit of talent in that offensive line room. Now, I think making the decisions on who you look at and say, I think we can mold this guy into being the level of player we need to succeed in the SEC. And which guys are you going? It's just not working. There's a mutual parting. There's already been one mutual parting on the O line with Nick Sharp. Guess what? There will be more. It doesn't take a rocket surgeon to say that. There will be more. And so I think for South Carolina, making those decisions on which ones to kind of like, we want to keep you around. Let's use this fresh start. Let's give you a different eye, a different coaching approach. And which guys are you just going, frankly, hey, we got to go in the portal and replace this guy?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a fair question, Corey, because certainly, look, it's a nuanced conversation, which is another thing that's not popular to say in college football or really in any sport, Wes. You've got an offensive line that I don't think anybody looks at it and says, that right there is, from a talent perspective, one of the best in the country. Nobody said, I've never said that. Wes hadn't said that. Nobody's saying that. But is there no question that there's more talent than what's been shown in terms of the production? Absolutely. I think we can agree on that. So to go back to what you said, Wes, there are certainly some pieces where you look and you say, Carolina needs to go into the transfer portal and upgrade this position. There's some others where you say, guys need time. Shed Surratt, he's a freshman. He started this year some games. Part of that necessity, part of it, he did some really good things, had a really good offseason. Got banged up at the beginning of the year. Safe to say, when he's a junior or a senior, he's probably going to be a better player than he was this past year. I even look at a Josiah Thompson. Pretty good for a freshman last year, especially. I think early this year, first half, frankly, had some struggles. He struggled. Thought he got a little better down the stretch. But a guy that a lot of schools wanted. And I think that's, frankly, Wes, been one of Shane Beamer's frustrations. He looks at it and goes, a lot of schools wanted a lot of these offensive linemen, but they're not where they need to be from a development standpoint. That's a primary reason that he made a change on the offensive line in terms of who's leading that room. So it made it in the middle of the season. So I think it's all of those things. Can you upgrade the talent? Yes. Can you upgrade the development? Yes. Can you upgrade the scheme to where it's more offensive line friendly? I think that's also fair too. So I think it's just all of the above. Would all 5 of South Carolina's offensive linemen all start for other SEC programs? Maybe not, probably not. Do they have some guys that could play or maybe even start at other places? I think so. And it's hard to make those apples to apples comparisons because you're talking about different schemes, different coaching staffs. I think the goal is you try to upgrade all of it. I think South Carolina would be in the position, even if, Sean Elliott was the offensive line coach the whole season, they'd still be looking at this thing from a staffing standpoint going, we got to go get some guys in the portal because we have to upgrade the talent here. So I think it's all of the above, Wes. Let's break real quick and tell everybody about some of our great partners. Wes, you got a couple queued up that you can talk about, I'm sure, here in a second. Palmetto Golf.
Who did you talk about earlier, Chris?
I talked about, as usual, our guy Clint Hammond, and then we talked about Ferry Chevrolet right off the top. So we're going to tell everybody about Palmetto Golf and Belts, palmettogolfing.com, December 12th. If you're sitting here going, crap, I haven't bought anybody anything for Christmas. If you know somebody who's a golfer, what a great spot to go. Palmetto Golf and Belts, palmettogolfing.com. Great thing about them, you're supporting a local business. You're supporting a Gamecock guy in Brandon Cohn with his local shop at palmettogolfing.com. Big Gamecock fan. Shocked he has not texted me about the new staff, although I saw him at church and he had a few words to say about it. And he's got great sourced, locally made products. custom golf belts, towels, tees, gloves. I think he's got club head covers now in the store, palmettogolfing.com. Great place to go if you're a golfer or if you're looking for a gift for that golfer in your life. The needlepoint belt's extremely well made and more affordable than a lot of the other retail options out there. The cross design, the palmetto tree and moon, garnet for the University of South Carolina theme, or the state of South Carolina blue, so much more. palmettogolfing.com.
All right, guys, I'm going to be honest. We got to pay a couple extra bills here because we didn't have a show on Monday. So y'all just bear with us. But Chris, I need your help, man, because I'm not a soccer guy. But
Yep.
the World Cup is coming back to North America. They tell me this is a big deal. Is it a pretty big deal?
Saying it is a huge deal.
Okay.
Tickets are going to be hard to find.
Are there more teams now than there were before? Is that a thing?
Oh boy, here we go. How long do you have? No, it's just, what do you mean?
Are there 48 teams for the first time now?
Like more countries? I don't even, you know what? I don't know if they expanded the World Cup field or not, but I mean, I should know that. I don't know.
I'm being told they were, so I'm just going to go with that.
Go with it.
Let me tell you, man, I don't know those answers, but what I do know is that if you need tickets, they are A, hard to get, and B, you can use the Game Time app to get them. The hardest ticket I ever tried to get was the World Series. I ended up, before they were even a sponsor, before they were supporting this show, I was going through different, how can I get tickets? I end up with the Game Time app. GameTime.co is how you can do it online. I would suggest just going ahead and getting the app, signing up, and then using the code ON3 and getting $20 off your first purchase. That's ON3. Terms to apply. But yes, if you're wanting to go to the World Cup, I don't know how many teams there are, but I know it's a big deal, and I know you can go with our friends at Game Time. And I know that regardless of this kind of offseason for football coming up, although there is a Carolina team with the Panthers that is actually leading their division now somehow. So maybe you want to go to an NFL game, a concert, something for Christmas, whatever you need tickets for, our friends at Game Time have got you. Game Time guarantee is on there. And my favorite part is that as long as you have that little thing toggled, it's going to tell you exactly how much the ticket cost before you get to the end. So it's not one of those things where you just get to the end and they've added the fees in. So check them out right now. Game Time app and gametime.co, not .com. And also, Chris, our friends at Brunt, there it is. If you're on the video version, you've seen it. Chris has tried it out. I've tried it out. We've now got listeners who have bought just because of this Brunt read. Why don't you just do what they do and hit up our friends at Brunt? And guess what, man? We still have a great deal going on. Bruntworkwear.com/GC. Use the code GC. You're going to get $10 off your purchase from Brunt. And the great thing about these boots, man, not only are they they just feel very, very well put together, but they are broken in right off the bat. You're not going to kind of have that long break-in period. They're going to be comfortable right off the bat. They can be dressed up. They can be a work boot. If it's cold out, you can even go walking in these things, man. So check out our friends. There's a lot of great stuff at bruntworkwear.com. I'm going to post the link right here in the comments for anybody that wants to go ahead and check that out. Would also make, like many of our sponsors, make a great Christmas gift as well if you're trying to figure out what to buy someone in your family. All right, let's roll this thing through, man. Stan Drayton, someone that we had reported Shane Beamer has wanted to hire for a long time. Beamer confirmed that in the press conference today. And it was kind of interesting how maybe people don't always realize all the moving parts behind hiring an offensive coordinator. And then you got these two other openings. All right, how are you going to fill these two openings? Interestingly enough, it kind of sounds like Stan Drayton was Shane Beamer's non-negotiable, and our guy Clem was Kendall Briles' non-negotiable.
It does seem that way.
And it seems like both sides were like, all right, you bring your guy, I'll bring mine. Let's make this work.
Yeah, it did. Stan Drayton, history with Shane Beamer. Somebody told me, Wes, on our forum, and it's okay. I think it was in the midst of everybody being a little on edge because they wanted an OC. It was maybe taking longer than they thought it should take. Not much of a connection because they coached together for a year 20 years ago. But if you listen to Shane Beamer today and you listen to Stan Drayton, those guys had that connection on Sylvester Croom's first staff, became close, it looks like, and have stayed in touch over the years. It's not they just were on a staff and that was the last they'd ever heard from each other. Shane Beamer's even mentioned Stan Drayton in the past in at least one of his press conferences, talking about kind of soliciting some advice from him in the past. So there's clearly a high level of mutual respect. And Wes, we were talking about Kendall Briles' resume earlier. Stan Drayton's got himself a heck of a resume too. He has, I think, some cachet when he's talking to running back recruits, when he's talking to families. He's won 2 national championships at Florida and Ohio State. He's been at Texas. He's coached for a little while in the NFL. He was a heck of an athlete himself. You look at some of the guys that he's coached in college and then at the pro level, or guys in college that have gone on to the pro level. Bunch of 1,000-yard rushers. Bijan Robinson, Jarius Norwood, Ezekiel Elliott, et cetera, et cetera. He has coached some guys. And so, he's got some cachet built up. I think a fascinating dude, Wes, when you hear him talk, like he's just very well put together. You can tell. And so someone that Beamer said, I mean, you alluded to it earlier, like he's wanted to have him on the staff basically the entire time he's been at South Carolina. Maybe the timing didn't work out in the past. It did now, and has the look of a pretty big hire.
Travis says no other running back coach in the country has coached a 2,000 and a 1,500-yard back. I'm going to trust you on that one, Travis, but that does sound really good. And so here's the thing, man. You look at this guy, and I'm with you. The other thing that just kind of stood out to me, even though he has been at all those blue blood programs you just listed off, didn't he just feel like he still, even as he's got, he's a veteran coach, he's gotten a little bit older, still just seemed genuinely happy to be at South Carolina and genuinely grateful and excited about the opportunity, and just kind of seemed like somebody that families and parents would want their kid to play for was kind of my takeaway. Like I know NIL and money and all that is a factor as well, but development certainly still matters. Relationships do still matter. I mean, this is a massive hire, it feels like, for South Carolina. And frankly, this, I'm trying to think of how to say this. They've let go of 2 running back coaches. Like that's a fact, They've let go of 2 running back coaches.
Yep.
So they needed more from that spot. And,
they have.
I think you've hired somebody that can give you. I don't have to remind anyone. Blackwell was supposed to do a press conference very early on in his career, and then at South Carolina, and he just didn't do it. I mean, in the grand scheme, does that matter? No, but just wasn't off to a great start, and then didn't land the high school guys you needed. So, and I think, dude, to tie this into your other point that we were talking about a second ago, what are the personnel decisions going to look like this offseason? As I watched more and more Briles offenses from the past, and there are way different iterations of what they try to do. Sometimes it's been a mobile quarterback. Sometimes they've done without the mobile quarterback. But I think having a bell cow back, having a guy you can just get the football to, it absolutely, I don't want to say it's a requirement in this system, but to really make it go, I'm sure it helps. And so I think this will be a good voice for Jawarn Howell, a good voice for Matt Fuller, but I also think you got to go portal hunting for another back to come in here and push those guys. Or, can you find a Rocket Sanders out there? I don't know. That'll be tough. But it'd sure be nice if somebody similar to 5 could walk through that door, I feel like, for this offense.
It is extremely hard to say, you know what, we can go. I mean, in some ways that year, the Gamecocks found somewhat of a unicorn, right? In that, remember that did coincide with Dowell Loggins, who had been at Arkansas, coming over to the South Carolina staff. You had Briles leaving Arkansas, so Rocket was looking for a new home. But you don't just find a guy that said, oh, I just rushed for 1,400 yards a couple years ago in your conference. You're right, that doesn't walk through the door very often. But yeah, I mean, what we know at a minimum, Wes, is you got 3 scholarship backs projected to come back, assuming everybody does come back. And then, you need, because of that, you've got to restock that room, right? You definitely need one more guy. You probably need 2 more guys. So, the portal is going to be a way to go do that. How do they kind of split it up? Can they find a big time guy, or do they find a couple guys, that they feel like can come in and push? I mean, Wes, it's hard to tell who's going to be the starter next year, right? But at the minimum, you want to bring in more competition and just more depth. You can't. Shane Beamer called it, frankly, impossible, and I agree, to go into the season with 3 scholarship backs. So you need some more depth. You need competition. That'll be kind of your entry point. Can you go find a big time guy out of the transfer portal? I think that's a key question, and maybe that's an area that Stan Drayton can help in. Yes, he's been at some big brand name logo schools. I get that. But he does have a good recruiting track record, a development track record. I think he knows what good looks like. He knows what really good looks like. You got to get him here. But that's going to be, key. That's going to be job number 1 before they even hit the field for spring practice. Who can you evaluate out of the portal? Who can you go, get out of the transfer portal?
Yeah, I mean, this is someone you went off the list a second ago of players he's worked with, man. But I mean, even right there at Penn State, looking at I was trying to pull up their numbers from this year. I mean, Katron Allen rushed for over 1,300 yards this year. Nick Singleton, who South Carolina fans were familiar with in the recruiting process, heck of a back as well. I mean, just right there, you're talking about the guys he most recently worked with are both studs, and I think are guys that kind of fit the bill of what you're looking for. And so, who out there is there somebody that he maybe didn't even coach in college, but recruited, and maybe they really liked him, and maybe he came in second or something like that, that is out there that maybe hits the portal that you can go get? We'll certainly see what that looks like. But again, when I think of personnel with this team, and part of the reason why I was a proponent of not just blowing the thing up, man, and giving Beamer another shot to come back and fix the offense and all this, is that if you can keep the right guys on this roster, even though South Carolina won 4 games this past year, it is not an entire roster reset. It's not. Now, you're going to need to have a very you have to be very sharp with your portal decisions this offseason in pairing up the right guy at these various positions, right? And you're going to have to go out. So Kilgore is officially gone now. Brandon Cisse is officially gone now. You're starting to see what you're going to need at particular spots. A lot of these positions, dude, if they keep the right guys, will actually get better because of just old school development. There is still talent among these young wide receivers we all talked about last year. They're going to be an entire year older. The linebackers, I mean, you think J.R. Johnson and Justin Okoronkwo and Sean Murphy aren't going to be better players next year because of all the snaps they got this year? They will be. But now, can you go add in the right pieces around them? And I think here's the thing, man. Can you find a couple of true difference makers out there to where it makes sense from a financial standpoint, it makes sense from the global roster standpoint to add a couple of guys that can just come in and sort of pair up well with what you already have? I think you may look at the roster and say, dude, they could use help at every position. I mean, probably so, especially if you're including depth help. But also, you're not going out there saying, well, they got to recruit 11 new starters on defense and 11 new starters on offense. Not the case at all. I would dare say in today's world, as hard as it is to keep your depth, everybody is probably going into the offseason to an extent going, there's not a position on our roster that's not going to need a little bit of help. So, but which positions end up being, this is a spot where we got to go get a difference maker. Does that person exist? Are they able to come in and, are you able to get them? Does the price get skyrocketed so much that it doesn't make sense with your budget? All those different things obviously are going to be pretty strongly at play here.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, and there were some guys, Wes. I mean, even last year's team going 4-8. I know people don't like and people feel very strongly. Some people are like, yeah, I mean, it was pretty close. Some people say, I do not want to hear that whatsoever. You cannot argue with the fact that it wasn't close from a record standpoint. South Carolina didn't win, 8 games. They didn't win 7 games. They won 4. So you're not close from that standpoint. Is it also a fact that they were in a bunch of games in the fourth quarter that they didn't win? Yes. Doesn't count. But what it does illustrate is, man, like, if they could have added some more pieces in the portal, or maybe if some of these coaching moves were made earlier, right? All those things have been brought up by fans, and I think they're all good points. Could this have been a little better? Maybe it wouldn't have been playoff good. Not saying it would have been 10, 9-game good. Could it have been better? Could you have gotten a couple of those games that you didn't get? Maybe. And look, the goal around here isn't, nor should it be, to win. Oh, we got bowl eligible. Nobody cares. I mean, you're super mad if you don't at least get bowl eligible. That's not your ultimate goal. I think the point, what I'm hearing from you, and I agree, you do have some pieces, even on a roster that went 4-8. There are a lot of pieces on this roster. There are a lot of players on this roster that other schools would absolutely love to have, which probably means those are the guys that you want to keep. But they certainly have their work cut out when they get into the portal to make sure that, whether it's going and getting kind of as much as you can, a no-brainer type, right? That's going to command high, frankly, NIL dollars. But there's also going to be some instances where you're going to have to go out and get, a Demetrius Knight type player. That's tough to find too. But can you get a guy or two like that where you're just making a really, really good eval on a really, really good player? I think, that's going to be critical too.
Well, and second straight year, let's be honest, man, defensive linemen are going to command quite a bit of money. Second straight year, you're probably going to be going, who can you bring in on the interior of the D-line? Who you can bring in at edge opposite of a guy like Dylan Stewart, assuming he comes back. What does that look like for South Carolina as well? I mean, you're going to have a lot of decisions to make in terms of that stuff, but it's not a dire situation, which is what it would be if you just like completely blew the thing up and had to start over entirely. So we will certainly see what that looks like as we close this thing out, man. And we'll certainly, as the year offseason goes on, we'll be diving more into the roster, to personnel, and we're going to keep digging on what the scheme may look like, I'm sure, too. So we didn't do a show on Monday. Last show was our National Signing Day for you and me, National Signing Day breakdown. At the time, Chris, we did a breakdown of every single player, but we did not have Julian Walker to talk about yet. And I don't think we talked about Landon Duckworth, because that was when we were still waiting to see if he was going to sign with South Carolina or with LSU. So what do you say we break down those guys here real quick? And Duckworth out there at the Mississippi-Alabama game right now. Yep. That thing's been going on for years. It's kind of their version of the Shrine Bowl. And Chris reportedly has turned some heads, as one may expect if they've been following Landon's career. The first thing that Cody Belair from On 3 mentioned is the upside is there. The ability to do all the things you're looking for from a quarterback is there. And Duckworth has already come out and put his full support behind the hire of Kendall Briles as well, who ironically was the first coach to ever offer Landon Duckworth.
Yeah, how about that? I mean, crazy how that ended up happening. But yeah, Landon, a guy that, man, what a recruiting journey and saga from, South Carolina landing a very, very early commitment from him. When that happened, Wes, you're going, okay, hey, first of all, this guy looks like a good player. Second of all, you go, this guy's going to keep getting a lot of offers, and this thing is absolutely not over, and which was very fair in this era to think that. Decommits, you know, has pushes from other schools, recommits to South Carolina, but then you have to sustain the late push from Lane Kiffin and LSU. Gamecocks were able to get it done, signed on Thursday instead of Wednesday, but got it locked up. And yeah, this is a guy, Wes, that, again, a true dual threat. I think he can continue getting better and better. But when you look at the physical tools, a guy that can run the ball, guy that can throw the ball. He's had some huge games in high school. Another guy that's a basketball player and has, a dunk highlight reel. So the athleticism certainly there. Had a couple folks, Wes, tell us that he's got, freaky type athletic traits. So I think still very much developing as a quarterback. But you look at Landon Duckworth, hard not to get excited about thinking about what he could be in the future.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Quite a journey. And to hold, I'll say this, man, to hold off Lane Kiffin at the end, pretty just impressive recruiting win for Darren Usher, for Shane Beamer. You did not have an offense coordinator hired yet. So you were really just asking him to trust you. And the fact that LSU was able to step in and make things interesting at the end, really not a surprise because, one, LSU, with the prior staff there, was able to get him on campus for a visit during the season. And two, the kid nearly committed to Lane Kiffin when Kiffin was at Ole Miss way back during his initial recruiting process. So to hold Lane Kiffin off with all the momentum, with the fact that Lane Kiffin was like the talk and the center of the college football world, I got to say, man, for an 18-year-old kid, having that guy that you've heard about for the last 2 weeks say, hey, man, I want you to come be my quarterback. I want you to come help me get this thing rolling at LSU. That's probably not easy to turn down, not easy to say no to. So
Sure.
I think it kind of said something about Landon and his mom that they, not that a kid is a bad kid if they swap their commitment. I'm never one of those people that believes that, but he had to have some true belief in what Shane Beamer is trying to do and a true connection at South Carolina. And wanted to see it through, honestly, to turn down, frankly, all that pressure and stick with South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine, I think there's kind of this misnomer in recruiting, if a guy thinks about another school, he doesn't even want to come here. No, these are just hard decisions. And I've never been in that situation, Wes, because I'm not one millionth of the athlete that Landon Duckworth is. So I've never been in that position, but you got to try to imagine all that pressure of having all these coaches who are really good at what they do, with blue blood, black, backing behind them with a logo and success and championships in their past. And frankly, there's NIL at play nowadays, which can't be ignored. For South Carolina to be able to keep the class together, they didn't have any signing day defections, as we've covered. They were able to flip a guy that we're going to cover in a little bit. They were able to keep Landon Duckworth in the class. I think that says something, and that's what you need. You got to, if you're trying to turn this thing around, you got to stack some wins. And Landon Duckworth probably not going to be a huge factor next year, as long as 16's back, et cetera. But this is the type of win for your program that you needed to have, and you're able to get it.
Yeah, and it would have been something to me, man, if you lost a couple of guys on signing day that were difference makers. It's not game over, right? Like, it's not, you can't win now because you didn't have a couple of high school guys. But it would have hurt. Like, you need guys, your high school players, man, now more than ever, need to be dudes that have some potential to be big impact guys. And that doesn't mean they will be, but you need to just stack as many guys like that as you possibly can, because we know how important the portal is going to be. We know how important all the other aspects are going to be. But your high school class, you need to take guys that at least have some chance to come in and be difference makers at some point in their career. Another guy who, I believe will also have that upside, Chris, you look at Julian Walker. I still remember the first time that we saw this kid. And it was at a South Carolina practice, and he was just sitting there walking or standing. You and I were like, did they get a transfer? Is that is that a defensive end? Is this a junior who's transferring in? And it was no. That's Jamil Walker's son. He's what was he, a sophomore at the time, Chris?
Yeah, I was gonna make the high school junior joke, but he probably was a sophomore. Didn't look like it.
Yeah, just a physically imposing individual who, a point that Charles Power made has really continued to develop and just get better in his technique and his ability as a pass rusher, as we're seeing here on the film a little bit.
Yeah, he's getting better and better. He's always had the look, he just physically advanced for his age, and that part has obviously not gone away, but I think he continues to get better and better. Sterling Lucas, his future coach at South Carolina, I think does a really good job of developing his guys and getting them ready. And so when you think about Julian Walker, who's 6'6" with a very long wingspan, you know that he's a workout guy because of not only his dad, but just the way he looks right now. You don't get that way just completely just by chilling. You got to be in the weight room to look like that. But he's gotten better and better just from a technique and a production standpoint, West, where the production's starting to, to match that potential a little bit more. And from a size and like tools standpoint, he has what you're looking for. So it was a big win. Yes, I know you had the connection to Jamil Walker on the staff. I know he's a guy who plays at Dutch Fork. The family lives here. Yeah, that ended up helping a good bit at the end. But there was definitely a pull to Michigan during this thing. Kind of fell in love with it when he went on the visit. There was an allure there, I think, but they were able to get this thing done. It was very close at the end. But I think another really good pickup and someone who has a lot of potential.
And North Carolina tries to come in, dude, at the very, very end. Apparently, according to Tom Knotts, was throwing around a lot of NIL promises as Knotts put in the way only he can. But I think when you look at Julian, like trying to think of who he reminds me of, like for South Carolina fans out there. I think he's already more physically developed than these two dudes. But if you go back in the Gamecock time machine a little bit, there's a little bit of kind of that like Devin Taylor, Clifton Geathers, just like tall, long arms. Like you're not going to quite see the Dylan Stewart pure pass rush, just straight up burst off the edge. Like he will be a bigger edge guy, I think, that can play the run and play the pass. But those long arms are going to make this kid a lot of money potentially one day, because maybe they already are, because just the ability to keep defenders off of you. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Like that is God-given length right there that a lot of guys just do not have.
No, I was, as you were saying that, I was like, I wonder if he's going to say Devin Taylor. And, Devin was very lean coming out of high school. He ended up putting on a lot more weight. He got huge in a good way by the time he left South Carolina and went to the NFL. But I think that's a good comp in terms of you just look at him and got those big, long arms, like just something you're just born with, right? And he's obviously developed a lot more physically than a lot of kids who were seniors in high school, because he's already like 250 pounds. He can get bigger. He can get stronger. He'll refine his technique. But I think a big get for Carolina on Thursday of early signing period.
Yeah. I don't know if the Devin comp, like at the same time period, is necessarily accurate, but I think Devin, what we saw him become physically, and Julian, definitely some similarities there, and we'll see if I'll be curious to see just how Julian continues to grow from here, man. Like just already being around a college program as much as he's been able to be with Jamil Walker there, and Jamil Walker being a lot more involved in the defensive line this year too, with some of the stuff that with Travian not being able to be out there. So he certainly has been exposed to some next level coaching and next level strength and development, stuff like that. So two good, I guess, one get for South Carolina and one hold for South Carolina there the day after signing day, keeping Duckworth in the fold and adding Julian Walker to that commit list. A top 15 class, man, which with just 15 guys in the class is pretty good number, I think, for South Carolina coming off of a 4-win season. So does it feel like the vibes have shifted just a little bit, man? You were talking about it earlier. People were getting antsy at the end of this OC search. People were getting on edge. I was getting on edge because of the people being on edge. And it finally is just in place. And now everybody can at least move forward to being on edge about who's going to be on the roster and who's not.
That's right. That's right. Plenty more to cover, man. So the coaching search stuff is behind us. They're all here. They're introduced. Somebody asked me today, are their contracts signed? You know what? I don't know, but they're approved, and there's no reason to worry about any of that. I don't think. So good to go there. Now, man, it's full speed ahead on just, figuring out what this roster is going to look like, what the offense is going to look like. All valid questions that I'm looking forward to getting into that now. The coaching search stuff was there's some fun elements to it, but it's over now. So let's move on to the other stuff.
What did you see Briles buyout if he were to leave?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, I can't remember what date. Basically, how we've seen coaches. It doesn't happen a lot. It's fairly rare, but we've seen coaches like accept a job and then move on within the same offseason. I mean, we saw it with South Carolina with the receiver situation a couple of years ago. We saw it with Bobo when Beamer first got here. Briles would owe like $6 million, I think, if he were to leave before the summer or something. So you can tell South Carolina put in roadblocks to keep that from happening to him. So now that there is a buyout later on, looking at if he leaves for a D1 head job or an NFL head job, if that were to happen, there's no buyout. But if he were to just up and leave you, $6 million for this offseason.
Yeah.
So that's not happening.
Yeah. Don't think it's happening. So yeah, they're in place. We're good to go. Moving on. Ready to attack the still dead period in recruiting. Everybody's getting ready for the portal. Opens January 2nd. Still plenty to cover between now and then the portal season is going to be, it's going to be Wild West.
Well, we got pre-portal season right now.
Got pre-portaling, yes.
Possibly just as big, just as crazy. So come check it out. GamecockCentral.com. Come hang out with us. All right, y'all, we're going to hop off here. He is Chris. I am Wes. Thank you so much for hopping on and bearing with us and joining us and all those things. And we'll be back very, very soon to continue the wild world of following Gamecock sports. So appreciate y'all as always. Y'all have a great week.